Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and this is the BookTube Rome Tag. So this tag was created by Jim over at Jim's Books, Reading, and Stuff. So Jim had recently made a tag video. It was what he said was going to be the last of his city tags, and also maybe one of the last tags that he created. He's been very prolific in his few years here on BookTube, creating a lot of really fun tags, including, like I just said, the city tags, where he takes a major city, New York City, for instance, and he creates bookish tag questions about them. So he had said in that video that that was probably going to be his last because there seems to be a waning interest in tags on BookTube. There might be some truth to that. I know that my interest in tags has probably lessened over time. The things that I really concentrate on my own channel are the Fresh Read Kills videos, which are where I just basically talk about the things that I've recently read and what my thoughts are on them, and monthly wrap-ups. Those are the non-negotiables for my channel, and every so often I will have a tag video in there as well, but I don't generally prioritize them. Now, I think that he makes fun tags, and I kind of hope that he creates some more in the future. But what he tagged me in actually was the Istanbul tag, which, of course, dealt with that city. But looking at the questions, I knew I really wouldn't be able to answer most of those questions at all. Certainly not in a way that would be satisfying and that would warrant me making a video about it. But then I realized that he had done a tag about Rome, little less than a year ago, so at some point last year, that I never got around to. I had done the New York City tag, but I thought, well, I can answer these questions at least, and we are currently in quarter one of Historathon 2024, which is where we read and discuss and celebrate nonfiction history, and we're in the first quarter, which looks at prehistory and ancient history. So I thought, you know what, instead of the Istanbul tag, hopefully Jim is okay with this, I'm going to do the Rome tag instead, because that aligns with Historathon. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through these questions and answer the prompts. I have my questions up here on my iPad. So let's begin. The first prompt: what was the last book you read set in Rome, or what is your favorite book set in Rome or Italy? The last book that I read set in Rome was nonfiction. Again, we are in Historathon, so I'm reading about ancient Rome during this quarter, and I just recently finished this one, Hannibal, Rome's Greatest Enemy by Philip Freeman. It's a pretty quick read, actually, but a biography about Hannibal Barca, who defeated the Romans over and over again. He ultimately ended up losing, but a fascinating story, one of the most fascinating figures, I think, in all of history. After I'm done recording this, I'm going to end up recording my thoughts on this book, but yeah, this is a lot of fun. This is the last thing that I read. He also asks, or what is your favorite book set in Rome or Italy? And I wasn't sure about that, because I'm thinking he might be thinking, I'm sure, more fiction. He definitely reads a lot more fiction generally than I do, but certainly I, Claudius came to mind by Robert Graves, classic of historical fiction. So this is certainly set in Rome. And I think last year I'd read My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier, and I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, a part of that book takes place in Italy, at least, and I thought that was also quite good. The next question: do you have a favorite book in translation? I don't know if I have a favorite necessarily. As I have mentioned, most of my reading tends to be nonfiction, though I do try to fit one or two fiction books in each month, and occasionally those end up being works in translation. But I definitely don't read as much translated fiction, certainly, as many other people on BookTube. But over the past few years, I did read Musashi, translated from Japanese, and I thought that was quite fun. I, of course, been reading things like the Ancient Historians, translated up to this point from Greek. I loved reading Herodotus. That was a lot of fun. Xenophon's Anabasis was also a lot of fun as well. And I am going to be, actually I just started today, Polybius, which this is a translated work, of course, but about Roman history. One of my favorites, though, sorry, I got piles everywhere here. One of my favorites for works in translation that I really liked was this one, Perfume, The Story of a Murderer by Patrick Zuskind. About 18th century Paris, a perfume maker who was also a murderer, but this was written sort of a very kind of whimsical fairy tale way. But I liked the story, first of all, but also I thought that the translation itself just was really well written. So this was definitely a highlight for me, one that stuck in my mind. So when it comes to translated works, this might be one of my favorites. Next question. Have you read any writers of the Roman Empire? By this, I mean ancient writers. And I've read some. I'm going to be getting into more of them, especially starting next year. Next year for Historathon, I do want to get into reading Caesar, maybe reading Sallust. And the year after that, I think tackling Livy, at least some of his stuff, because he's got a lot. But I have read at this point already Suetonius. I've read the 12 Caesars, which is fun. It's very kind of, feels like tabloid history sometimes, with all the terrible things that some of these Caesars were getting up to. And I have also read The Golden Ass by Apuleius. Hopefully I'm saying that one right. Kind of an early fantasy story about a guy who gets turned into a donkey, which is a lot of fun. But those are the ones that I have read. And like I said before, I am just now beginning Polybius histories. He technically was Greek, but he was writing in Rome about Roman history. So I think he counts even if he wasn't writing in Latin. But this should be pretty good. This deals with the war with Hannibal. So it should be a good read. Have you read any books in other languages? Yes, I have. So nothing big. I'm not fluent in anything except for English. But last year, for about a year's length, I was teaching myself to read some Latin, and I can read basic Latin. So I was reading novellas, which is fun, things like this. I haven't read this one yet, but you see it says a crime story in easy Latin there on the top. So these are the kind of things that I'll pick up and start reading. So they are written at a fairly elementary level of Latin, but there's some good stuff there. But these are some things that I've read in that. I've read some simple things in Spanish, so I know some Spanish. Things more so like comic books I've read in that language. And right now I am teaching myself to read some French. So I'm hoping within about a year's time or so, I'll be able to dive into something like this, The Little Prince. This is the French edition. So I've heard that you don't have to be at a super high level to read this, and people seem to also really like it. So this is one of my goals, to get good enough at French that I can read something like this, or Albert Camus' The Stranger, something like that. I'm not trying to pronounce this stuff because I still really am terrible at French pronunciation, but I'm starting to be able to read some of it, which is not bad for me. Number 5, do you have a favorite movie set in Rome? There's some that I like. I do like Gladiator, Ridley Scott's Gladiator. I think that it's one of those movies that is not great when it comes to the historical details, but is very effective in transporting the viewer into what feels like another time. So when I watch that movie, I feel like I'm, back in ancient Rome, even if I know there's certain things that are inaccurate going on. I think that it captures the essence very, very well. It's just a well-made movie, I think, and a pretty compelling story as well. Roman Holiday, I think, is fun. The 1953 romantic film with Gregory Peck and Audrey Hepburn. That one's still a good time, good thing to watch. And I say my favorite, though, is the HBO series Rome. Ran for 2 seasons, looks at basically the fall of Julius Caesar and the rise of Augustus, and just incredibly well done. The sets, the recreation of the city of Rome itself is fantastic. Graffiti and all. The characters feel like they think and they operate in an ancient way. They feel very foreign in so many ways. They don't feel like 21st century people who have been transported and have togas put on them. They think in a very ancient way. And you could tell that a lot of research went into that show. So if you want to get a feel for, I think, what ancient Rome was like, that's really where you would want to go. And I thought that was an excellent series. I think there were some missteps. They unnecessarily shoehorn things like sexual affairs just so they can get some R-rated sex scenes in that don't really add much to the script and actually deviate often too far from actual history. But when they're on, they're on, and you can definitely learn a lot from about the era from that series. His next question: what is your favorite Italian car? I don't have an answer for this one. 7. Many of Shakespeare's plays were set in Italy. Do you have a favorite? I don't know about a favorite. So the 4 that I know of that are set in Italy, we've got Julius Caesar, of course, Romeo and Juliet, I think Othello, Merchant of Venice, which I actually haven't read Merchant of Venice. I think Titus Andronicus is also set in Italy. Those are the ones that I know of offhand. I know Romeo and Juliet fairly well. Also Julius Caesar, I've read, I think, maybe at least twice, but it's been a long time. Othello I read once in high school. And that's one that I'd have to go back to again to really know how I feel about it, because I feel like I'd have a totally different opinion today. So I know that one is also held in pretty high regard. And I have not read Titus Andronicus yet, but I really want to. So maybe this summer for Shakestember, the September BookTube event where people generally read Shakespeare, I might try and read Titus Andronicus. But at this point, just for the ones that I have read and that I can kind of remember, I would say Julius Caesar is probably my favorite at the moment. 8. Do you have a favorite Italian writer? This is where, the kind of questions like this make me realize how much I have not read yet. So no, I really haven't read much as far as Italian writers at all. Some nonfiction stuff here and there. I'd like to dive into Umberto Eco at some point. His book is off screen over here. I have, is it The Name of the Rose? Is that what it is? I have that up there on my shelf, but I do want to give him a try, but I just haven't read enough Italian authors to really have an answer for this one. Number 9, do you have a favorite Italian dish, or what is your favorite pizza topping? And there are too many good Italian dishes. I love a chicken piccata, chicken parmesan, spaghetti carbonara, calzones, penne alla vodka. That's pretty great. I love all those. And pizza toppings, I like a spicy pepperoni on my pizza. And lastly, 10, have you ever been to Rome? And so yes, my wife and I went there for our honeymoon. I think that was back in 2007 we went there. And it was great. We were just a few blocks away from the Pantheon. So every night we would take a walk and we'd sit by the Pantheon and we just kind of people watch and, get some gelato or something like that, or some slices of pizza and just hang out by the Pantheon. We were also, of course, very close to Lake Trevi Fountain, Spanish Steps, and everything is within walking distance for us. But it was great. When, the Vatican, was it the Castle San Angelo? Is that what it's called? It's been a while, so I might be misremembering some of these names. But of course, going inside the Colosseum, Capitoline Hill, Palatine Hill, we did quite a bit. We explored that city as much as we could, and it was great. It was a terrific trip. Definitely a place that we want to go back to again. Some of our favorite memories are from when we were hanging out in Rome, especially something like the Pantheon. I've said this in videos a long time ago when this sort of question has come up, but you have that old expression, all roads lead to Rome. And when we sat there at the Pantheon, you just kind of felt it. You just kind of felt like you were at the center of the universe there as we were sitting there, just kind of watching the world go by. And I think that is it. Yes. That is the last question for the BookTube Rome tag. Once again, credited by Jim over at Jim's Books, Reading and Stuff. I'll leave his handle below. If you haven't checked out his channel, please do so. He's a super nice and creative guy, and I'm sure you'll like a lot of his content. And yeah, he always creates these fun tags, and I do, for one, personally hope that there's some more in the future. So anyhow, thank you, BookTube.